Hey there, and welcome to Better Advertising with BetterAMS, a podcast to help grow and scale online brands through our interviews with inspirational brand founders, as well as us advertisers who are fighting in the trenches of ad console daily. My name is Justin Knuckles, and I'm your host. Joining me today is our Amazon ads expert from Guatemala and a veteran from the private label side of Amazon, Gabriel. I'm excited to get our podcast rolling again with Gabriel's help, so without rambling too much longer, let's welcome in G.
Justin, it's a pleasure to be here today and speak with you about everything Amazon ads across the world.
I'm very excited to dive into the international side of ad management. We're coming off the heels of Amazon Accelerate up in Seattle, and it's always a blast going with you because you hit the floor and you manage ads 3 countries away, but everybody rushes to see you on the floor and knows who you are. It's really cool to see. You've been in the Amazon space for quite a while. Let's just start there. What is your experience getting into e-commerce and Amazon to begin with?
Yeah, well, I actually got into e-commerce starting my own brand back in like maybe 2015, 2016. And I stole that brand before the pandemic hit around January 2020. I got probably super unlucky or super lucky, depending on what perspective we look at. But I had been managing advertising for a while then, and I got the opportunity to join the BetterAMS team, and it's been almost I think 3.5 years now, and it'll be 4 years this March. So super blessed to be a part of this team and continue to learn.
It's been a blessing, I think, for all of us to work with you. I mean, you've seen BetterAMS grow through many stages and have seen a lot with clients. So it's always great to strategize with you and get in a room and just talk ads. So we're going to bring everybody else into that conversation exactly today. So wanted to ask you a little bit about managing internationally, because that's kind of your expertise, is helping a lot of our clients in the Latin American countries, as well as in general, just international marketplace expansion. So introduce us to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's don't go too far and let's compare what Amazon advertising looks like in the US to what it looks like in places like Mexico, for instance. Mexico's Amazon Mexico is one of the fastest growing marketplaces right now, alongside with probably the Singaporean marketplace, the Japanese marketplace on the Amazon.com bubble. And if we look at those, they're super up and coming. Like sponsored display was rolled out on 2021 on Amazon Mexico, for instance. So that's super new. There was not a lot of people running sponsored display ads back then. And Amazon plays a little bit different with things like search results, for instance. So if you go onto amazon.com.mx and you search for things like detergent or toothpaste, we won't see the typical structure where you see sponsor brands headline ads first, and then you see sponsor products top of search. Amazon plays a little bit different with that, and they'll showcase the typical sponsor brands headline ad, but they won't show any sponsor products top of search. Across, I would say now it's kind of 50-50. In the beginning, Amazon wouldn't show any sponsor products top of search placements, which is interesting because they were kind of, if you look at it this way, they were kind of trying to push brands to get brand registry so that they could get actual brands to sell on Amazon and start showcasing, custom imagery and get their logos up and get their storefronts built. Like they were trying to kind of use a filter to have people purchase that kind of ad inventory and go dominate the entire search results.
There's quite a bit to take away from that for a lot of people listening. That's a lot different from just US selling and advertising. First off, the ad products that we have available to us are not always a one-to-one carryover. Sponsored display being the perfect example. That being just brand new to a lot of sellers in Mexico. So how do you tailor strategy with all that being said? Additionally, not having the same top of search tools that we would use to try to get that above the fold placement with ads. How do you tailor strategy a little bit different given, these differences across the marketplaces?
Yeah, there are definitely we have to definitely pivot on certain approaches we would typically take. Let's say on the US, we would typically go for a single keyword campaign structure on sponsored products to try to,
Right.
get the hang on monitoring what's the conversion rate at the keyword level and monitor more closely impression share, stuff like that. On an international marketplace like Mexico, yes, that works. We will probably get a lot of rest of search data rather than top of search data, just based off how Amazon is structuring the search results. But there is also sponsor brands impression share data available for sponsor brands headline ads, so we can get a good idea on whether we're dominating top of search results, at least from a sponsor brands perspective, before we decide to go ahead and pivot or iterate from that strategy to another strategy. In terms like sponsor display or competitor targeting in general, it's super interesting because we still see to this date super cheap CPCs compared to the US or probably any other marketplace. We typically see a really good ROAS, and that gives us the opportunity to, if we want to go ahead and compete against Colgate or LB brands like that, we will probably pay pennies on the dollars for what we would pay in the US to showcase across these products or these catalog product detail pages or search results, depending on how aggressive with it. But we could still get it super cheap.
And is that specific to Mexico, or do you see that in general with a lot of international marketplaces?
So these would still apply to probably Mexico, Spain, Italy, in the UK, across supplements, as well as in Germany. We have seen CPCs start to increase year by year, and they're probably super similar to the US by now. But all of the rest of these marketplaces I mentioned, they are still super cheap compared to their comparable peers, which would be the UK, Germany. They're quite pricey by now.
And you see similar ad performance, like you said, if ROAS is just as strong, if not stronger, I mean, that must mean conversion rates for the English keyword are the same as roughly the Spanish keyword. So you're seeing similar ad performance in general. It's just cheaper CPCs.
Yeah. That's a good call out. So conversion rate is probably a lot lower. So if we're used to see we're super used to see probably a range between 10% and 20% conversion rate across the board in the US. And we would be super aggressive on stuff that's not performing probably above 8%, 8% and above, or 7% and above. We would take it down or probably bring our bits down because it isn't as good as other keywords, performing above 10% or so. While in Mexico, Spain, Italy, we can get a lower CPC, but that also comes with a decrease in CVR. So a good comparison would be if we get a $1 CPC in the US, we can probably get a 10 cent CPC in Mexico. But in terms of conversion rate, we can get a 10% conversion rate in the US, and that translates into probably a 2% conversion rate in Mexico. Not because the purchase intent isn't there, but because just for now, that's just kind of the benchmark we have on how fast things convert, at least looking at a category level, right? If we would transition that into brand, probably looks different if we would just analyze competitor alone. But here, taking that perspective of just looking at the category keywords, that's what we're looking at. But the CPCs are so cheap, they compensate that decrease in CVR, and it still turns to be a really good ROAS.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. Even if your conversion rate's really low, cheap CPCs can potentially make up for that and still turn out a profitable keyword or target. I'm curious, have you ever looked at the brand metrics side of those international marketplaces to see how, competitor and category conversion rates look compared to your brand, similar to how we do in the US, and say, last week we saw a big bump in conversion rate. Did our competitors see the same? We go to brand metrics to answer that. Have you done the same in Mexico or these other marketplaces? Is it a lower conversion rate in general for everybody?
So there is a lower general conversion rate for everybody, but at the same time, there are probably brands. There's a reduced number of brands taking advantage of the international marketplaces opportunity, especially the bigger brands, the Procter and Gamble brands, the Nestle brands, and they're getting, it's like the top 1%, right? The top 1% right now in Amazon Mexico is getting probably 70-80% of the total of the total sales for certain categories. So the category top usually looks super strong in terms of CVR and in terms of awareness, consideration, stuff like that. But the category median will look super weak because there is this group of sellers who are trying to start to sell abroad, and they're considering maybe one or two of their main products and not necessarily um, their entire catalog. They are not allocating a portion of their budget towards search advertising so that they can get their products moving, targeting more competitors, stuff like that. So category top remains super strong, like probably what we see in the US across the board. Really good category top purchase rate, consideration rate, awareness rate. In Mexico, it does look similar in that sense. Like the top 1% is getting a lot of the traffic and a lot of the sales. But it's just probably these one, two brands that are still getting a really, really low CPC and really, really low, really, really good ROAS, just because it's kind of a blue ocean still for these brands, and they're taking advantage of it. And some of them are, and some of them are not, because if we go category by category, we can spot really quick. No one's really taking care of this category. The sponsored brands search results don't even align with the products or with the keywords, stuff like that, and they probably just have one or two autos running without anything else than just hopes for getting conversions.
A lot of really good takeaways there in terms of fleshing out a full strategy behind your products to really measure, what your performance is in Mexico compared to the US. That's a first off. Second off, I have a question because I'm not a Spanish speaker and you are. How does the marketplace
Yeah.
look in general for a lot of these products on the SEO side? As a shopper, when you hit, a Tide laundry detergent listing, does it look just as good as the comparable US English listing that, a lot of their brands are comparing performance to? Are they set up for success?
Well, something I've seen is, I would say that the way they showcase the images and the way they work on the CEO on the SEO is super similar, but category search on certain categories isn't as strong as as it is in the US right now. So a good example would be the toothpaste category. Mexico, the Mexico market has probably more searches for Colgate than they do for toothpaste, and it's not because it's not because there's not huge demand for toothpaste itself, but people have this way of not like built-in brand loyalty, but they do have a way for search of things where they go more direct towards the specific brand, or at least that's kind of the brand they're used to. So they are more likely to search for Colgate directly than search for toothpaste. So if we would be working with one of their competitors or a new toothpaste in the space, we would probably try to get some real estate and impressions from Colgate alone. And yes, we would need to re-educate the customer on that. But that's what we have seen, that across looking at what are the keywords that get the most traffic category by category, brand loyalty is strong. Probably a lot of the efforts you have seen over years in the US have been replicated in Mexico across different types of advertising. And we do see that reflected on Amazon nowadays. Demand for, or search volume for, branded keywords, it's super strong. It's huge, and the category searches are trying to pick up, but they're just not as strong as branded searches.
So, kind of a tangent takeaway I have is, should brands be focused on running brand awareness campaigns? A lot of sponsored brand video, lifestyle, custom images and videos. Should that be a focus when you're going international for a lot of these? I'm not going to say small brands, but mid-size, not those enterprise omni-channel brands like Tide and Colgate.
For omni-channel brands, like, they got the amazing opportunity to just showcase all of their different products across branded searches. If they align, they can introduce new products because that demand's already there for omni-channel brands. For new brands, let's say a brand just raised $2 million. We have seen cases like that, right? And they want to enter Amazon Mexico. They have the chance to go after these omni-channel brands keywords, because first, CPCs are still cheap. Second, there are super likely to not be protecting those search results. So they got the chance to not just have cheaper CPCs, but probably start collecting impressions sooner than they would expect, or sooner that they would those impressions and conversions in the US. And at the same time, just showcase why the brand is better than the one they're searching for. And that's like something if we would that's something that if we would try implementing in the US, it would either be super expensive or it would just not work, right? Like you would struggle to get impressions and to get clicks as you continue increasing your bits to try to collect data at very specific branded keywords. So there are opportunities in both sides there. Omnichannel, I've seen some really cool things by I can throw this I could throw in this example, Birdman. That's a born in Mexico protein brand, and they're not letting anybody take market share on their protein category keyword and on their protein branded keywords, and they're doing a good job showcasing the different available ad types, sponsor brands, custom image, sponsor brands video. They're showing top of search where they can on sponsor products, and they're an Amazon native brand, still protecting a lot of their real estate on Amazon, as well as trying to get some impression share cut on the category keywords. But if we would go again category by category, we would see that there's still a lot of opportunity for both omnichannel and and up and coming brands to take over those placements.
Sure, sure. And have you seen those creative ad types do well? Specifically, like I was mentioning, video and custom image. Have you seen those do really well in the international setting with either new to brand rates, awareness and impressions, like we're talking, or even ROAS, if that was the goal?
Yeah, um, I would say so. Yeah, in terms of generating an impact, I think we can collect data super quick in that sense because we are seeing people click on our ads when we're advertising against that competitor, and that's just the call out that people first in the first place show interest in the product. Second, that we were able to drag their attention and jump from searching from one brand to click on another, and that tells us a lot about how willing they are to exchange brands. And we have seen stats on this. 30-40% of people are willing to test a different brand while surfing on the platform. So there's still opportunities of stealing market share in that sense. But yeah, in general, depending on the strategy, right, we have seen a good pace of new to brand customers when running this approach. And in terms of awareness, well, as long as we're getting the clicks away from another competitor, that's good enough to tell us that we're doing a good job there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good call out here while we're talking custom image creatives, to make sure if you're going to implement any of these, obviously making sure that your video assets are tailored to that audience, meaning the appropriate language, any text on the video, making sure that that's translated. So I know I've run into issues, where you didn't watch the video fully, and maybe there's one keyword at the end of the video, and so getting that swapped out. On that point of translations, how do you go about doing keyword research or carrying over your current targets in the US to Mexico or any other Spanish marketplace? How do you go about doing that translation process and keyword research process?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because there is a so just like in the U.S., there's a good amount of native Spanish speakers. And we could go ahead and go into a rabbit hole of whether we should have Spanish keyword campaigns across the U.S. or not. But the thing here is, within the Mexican marketplace, there's also a good amount of maybe not native Spanish, English speaking people, but they have adopted English as a second language, whether they live in the US or not. So a lot of these search results, if we will look into like search terms for headphones, like let's say we have this split between headphones in Spanish and headphones in English, and we might want to have ads for those for both of those. But ideally, usually when onboarding a new client in the Mexican marketplace, yes, we could translate part of those, probably manually look into those keywords before submitting a new campaign, just to make sure that the translations are done right. And at the same time, we will collect the search terms upon those initial keywords, so we'll get a better idea of what the users actually use for finding our products and our catalog or our brand. And when that happens, we typically see that mix. You wouldn't expect it, but you do see a good mix between keywords in English, keywords in Spanish, um, and of course, Spanish keywords will predominate. But there's an interesting mix depending on the category too.
So there's no reason to wait to translate your whole, target list to get started in Mexico. You can start out with your best performing English targets and probably see success.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Amazon has done a good job on taking a search term and translating that search term, whether your browser is set in Spanish or in English, or depending on your location. So even if you would start off with your English keywords, they would translate it for you. And Amazon, if you go manually onto the campaign creation process, Amazon will also allow you to translate your keywords into Spanish once you are just right there within the campaign creation process. With a button, you can translate your keywords onto the local marketplace language, and you can take it from there too. But I would still try both and see what happens and start collecting data from there.
Yeah, the Amazon product team, a shout out here for that translation feature, because that has saved me, being a English native only speaker, to being able to launch campaigns across various European marketplaces and even some Spanish speaking marketplaces. So that is a great feature if you don't have a multilingual team member on your brand. What are you looking forward to here in the international setting? Any new rollouts, any new ad types, betas, maybe that people are already familiar with in the US, like we were saying earlier, sponsored display. Is there anything really new in the Mexican marketplace that you're getting excited about?
Well, we want to still collect more data on what our sponsor display storefront video type of search looks like. Because again, Amazon has been playing a lot with what search results can look like in Mexico. And initially, we didn't have any sponsored products at inventory within top of search. Now we do across a good amount of categories, which is good, because word in the street is a lot of one of the best ways to incentivize organic ranking is through sponsored products, exact match campaigns. But sponsored brands, storefront, top of search, it's something different, right? It's video. It immediately attracts your attention. It's a stop scroller for sure, and we have seen that rolled out across the few categories, but we want to see more of it, and we want to see what it does look like when launching it at scale. I think that'll be a very interesting exercise. And in the US, we've seen good results of it because it's just a huge banner, right? I think it's even, in terms of pixels, I think it's even bigger than the usual sponsor brands headline ad, or even with custom images. So we want to see more of that. Sponsored display was rolled out again 2021. It was kind of new for a lot of people, even if they had tried it in the US before. But since it doesn't represent a huge portion of advertising sales, it didn't move the needle too much. Although we have seen good results out of it, and the tools we have in terms of remarketing from that particular ad type, they're huge. But in terms of total sales, it doesn't move the needle as good as sponsored brands video could.
But no, like we were saying earlier, I mean, brand awareness, especially in the Mexican marketplace and international marketplaces, could be huge. That sponsored display video type could be massive in terms of just brand awareness growth, and branded search volume growth.
Yeah.
On that point, top of mind, if you have any case studies, not to name names, but have you any experience? Can you point to any case studies that you can look back to yourself and say, this brand came over to the Mexican marketplace, and over the course of 6 months, a year, we saw them, really become a top brand in the category, or see a large, additional revenue growth outside of just the US. Any success stories you have on international expansion?
I do have some the top of mine, the brand that comes at the top of my head right now. It's a brand we relaunched in the Italian marketplace. They operate across the world, but this one was very particular. That this marketplace was very particular because they didn't have like they were doing a relaunch because they had a suspension. Something happened, right, and we had to relaunch, and we got hired to take their relaunch on the and we did it basically from zero, right? And the same metrics apply. We got access to the same tools. We got access to the same monitoring, impression share, impression rank, search term reports, of course, checking at their results from within the targeting tab. Like we have all of these options available, just like we do with the US, right? But it's everything in Italian, like you said. Like I'm bilingual, but I speak zero Italian, right? So I still need to rely on certain like translate formulas upon spreadsheets to understand where we're heading. But very similar scenario, like we had 20 cents CPC across the board. We had our CPC at 80 cents for a while we collected data, and we were more aggressive showing up across sponsored products results. Um, we were able to quickly, start winning top of search placements because CPCs historically are low in Italy. And over time, our organic ranking started to pick up across our top keywords, and through I think it was like through two lightning deals combined with our efforts on the advertising side, we were able to come back to, I think we are right now at like 6 viewers a week, which is really good. And now it's just about replicating that across the rest of the EU. But yeah, that's kind of the success story I have top of my head right now. And if we would consider launching from scratch in this category, in marketplaces like the UK or the US, the story would have the success story would probably have taken much longer, or the brand would probably they would have probably stopped from continuing, because at the beginning you had to be super aggressive to get results going, and sometimes if the CPC is too expensive, brands will kind of hold from proceeding with an execution like that, because they can feel it's too risky, or they can feel it's just too expensive. They'll try it from outside of Amazon, but that's not the case across these marketplaces.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is more expensive to do a lot of those big brand awareness ranking pushes in the US compared to internationally. And the demand volume may not be as big in Italy as it would be in the US, but that same dollar amount, if you're going to invest it on marketing, probably going to go a lot further internationally because, again, those CPCs are so dang cheap. So it's a really, really cool success story. How long did that take in general from like starting with this brand to kind of seeing a point of, wow, we're actually seeing success now? Was it 6 months, a year? How long did that take?
No, we probably it probably took us around 8 weeks total, between like doing zero revenue a week to doing 6 figures. There were certain important things like aligning our bid increases with aligning deals. The first one, we aligned them in a way that we could cover all of the important keywords we would need to show up for. And on the second one, we slowed down a bit because organic ranking had climbed up a little bit, so that we could allow people to click on the organic rank first and find the ad second, if in case they would skip on the organic result. And that was the way we made our way through.
That's really impressive. 8 weeks is a fast turnaround. And this was, again, given no knowledge of the Italian language, using, Amazon Translate features and Google Translate formulas. That's very impressive.
I have to say though that this brand got suspended, right, in this particular marketplace, and they had already a good product, a good amount of reviews. Talking about expectations here, right? They had a good amount of reviews, like thousands of reviews, and by the time we relaunched this brand, it was about getting the visibility, the traffic, and the organic ranking back in place. And the combination of these things, the intersection of these things happened, and we got back at full speed with them.
Yeah, thank you for resetting expectations here. I think that's what Amazon just calls retail ready. A lot of people launch with no ratings, no reviews, brand new, and they're like, "Why am I not selling well? Why is my ROAS,
Yeah,
point two?"
I,
Um,
and there is nothing wrong with launching like that. It's just that's just the way to launch when you got a new product.
right.
But in this particular case, like we needed to go back to last year's numbers because there was like sales history, so we needed to be at last year's performance or better. Thankfully, we're doing better than last year now with the relaunch completed. But it was an established brand. They were already making money, and they were not launching by scratch. There's I don't think there might be a way or two to get to six figures in a week or two, but in this case, it was a brand that already had some of that history. They just lost the sales for a couple of months, and they were starting from basically zero.
Well, we're definitely going to have to get into the conversation around Spanish campaigns in the US. So, leveraging that to really tap into a Spanish speaking audience in the US, I think would be a super fun conversation for us to get into next time. But until then, thank you so much for being here today, dude. It was a great catch up and collaboration session.
It was a pleasure to be here and speak with you, Justin.
Well, have a great rest of your week, man. We'll talk soon. To everyone else, cheers and thank you so much for being here.